All right, we're back with the Geometron. It's a large, which is a 515 mil reach in Geometron world. At this point, I think I can speak on how this bike works, how you need to ride it in comparison to other bikes, and just kind of how the setup process has gone. So let's get into it. So what I think is interesting with this bike is that, you know, it's in that long reach category. My big thing is chainstay to front center balance. This bike, you know, even though it has a pretty long chainstay, 457, given that the reach is so long and the head angle is so slack, the front rear center balance isn't, you know, as good as say like my Forbidden was, with a shorter reach and still a really long chainstay. But I think other bikes get in this awkward territory where the reach gets really long, the chainstay maybe isn't there to compensate as much, and you end up having to ride the bike super over the front to get the front wheel to track. Like the S4 Enduro I'm riding, it's like you need to ride that bike over the front to get it to corner, but that puts you in a bit of a position where you're kind of exposed, like, and it doesn't feel as confidence inspiring or as natural to be in that position. And I'm having to do like a bit of a dance with my center of mass that allows me to not focus on the trail. So it's like, I almost feel like if you're gonna have a bike that doesn't have a bit of a shorter reach and a longer chainstay and have that like super balanced front to rear center ratio, this thing comes in and puts the reach way out there. And it does have a bit of a longer chainstay to compensate, but the reach is so far out there that like you have the confidence to be in that riding position, and it almost puts you there by default because it's pulling you a bit further forward on the bike, and it doesn't feel scary to be there because the front wheel is so far out in front of you. And that's where I think this bike really is in its own category, you know, at least in proportion to my size. I'm 6'1". I don't have to think about being in that forward position, whereas on like the S4 Enduro, I really have to be conscious about being forward on the bike. And that's something that for me, like, I just don't want to have to think about where I'm putting my weight. It's just not as natural for me to ride. This had a bit of a longer get to know you period, but now I'm at the point where I'm not really thinking about where my weight is, and I don't feel like I'm compensating for anything. Frame by framing some videos, like, I'm not the best rider in the world, so I definitely get out of shape still, but I'm like noticing that I'm like in a really good position on the bike, I think a lot more often, like mid corner. And I think that is kind of what this whole concept is about, is this longer reach, slacker head angle, big wheelbase, just giving you the confidence and the room to ride this bike aggressively pretty much at all times. What you do have to learn, and it's part of the learning curve, is just trusting the front end. Because at first it's like, man, it's so far out there, like I feel like it's gonna front wash on me. But I really haven't gotten caught out on this bike with like crazy front washes, and it feels like the front end has a lot of grip. But it does require you to really lean the bike. This is not a steering bike. You really have to lean the bike and throw it into corners. It doesn't feel like it's just like dancing under you. You really have to tell this bike what to do. So if you're a rider that's kind of more passive, that's something to be aware of. Yeah, this bike rewards really calculated and intentional input, especially when you're cornering it. And once you have the confidence to really commit, put it on a lean angle, the bike just seems to carve like the most smooth arc through the corner possible. Like, the amount of little hiccups and corrections that happen mid-corner are really far and few between. And it kind of makes it almost boring to ride sometimes, but I feel like it's fast. It seems like some corners that feel really messed up and crazy, you end up just carving a really smooth line through it, and the bike just doesn't seem to get upset very often. You can definitely throw it around when you need to. It's just long. It's like there's no getting around the wheelbase, finding little pockets on the trail, like doubling up little things. It just takes a long time to, like, if you're gonna load and bunny hop, like that whole process just takes longer and takes more effort too. Since the front end's so long, the chain stays long, It's not just going to get up on that back wheel and pop off things. So just playing with little features in the trail and like pumping for speed. If the pumps are big enough, they definitely get you going, but it's pretty tough to, you know, snipe little landings everywhere. If you're looking for a bike to do that, you're probably not looking at this thing. And like, that's the whole point, is that this bike has superpowers and maybe some weaknesses, but you buy this bike for its superpowers, which is its composure at speed. It's cornering, honestly. It's a certain style of cornering, but I think it has superpowers in some situations where I feel like it gives me confidence that other bikes don't really give me. Those long corners where you have to commit, it might be a little unsupported. I feel like you can really trust this bike to look ahead and carve that corner and really commit. And then on the tighter stuff, you can initiate the turn off the front and have the rear end slide around. I was really surprised, like slapping tight little ruts, that it actually did that really well. And I feel like I was able to get the traction where I need to, get the bike turned, and be shot off in the direction that I wanted to go. Like bouncing out of a rut into an off camber, I feel like I was able to do that really well. I've kind of been impressed. You know, it was a bit to get used to, and I don't think this is for everyone, but it's a really unique ride experience, and it's just clear that the bike has intentions around speed. Once I've kind of figured out what it wants from me, and, you know, especially crashing earlier on, I had a bit of a tentative relationship with it, but once I was confident to push it and make those really calculated inputs into the bike, it really rewarded that. And I do feel like it's boring sometimes, but I feel like it's fast, and that's why this bike exists. The shock is really interesting. I have it in the 175 mil travel mode. I'm still figuring out the shock. I feel like it has a lot of potential, but I just haven't figured out my spring rate damping ratio. I feel like I might be a little firm on the spring and firm on damping, but the shock, it really impresses me in moments. I just feel like I need to get a little bit more suppleness and activeness out of it. So I'm kind of working on that. I think this bike pairs excellently with the Öhlins fork, because you really do put a lot of weight into it at certain points, and it holds up great. The last thing I want to touch on is the climbing. This is like the most comfortable seated climbing position I've ever had on a bike. Like, no lie, I feel like my back is super supported, my hands are in a great place, and being that it has a longer chainstay, like, it just plants the front, and I've been able to tackle some climbs that I didn't expect to make. It doesn't feel like I'm fighting the bike for traction very often. Like, I don't know, it's a really easy bike to climb for what I do, which is climb up fire roads, climb up single track. You know, I'm not like the Moab guy doing like hella crazy technical climbs. It just keeps me comfortable, which I think saves me a lot of energy and pain on the climbs. It's just a really cool platform. I think the Geometron guys make a really quality product, and they're in a niche that not a lot of other bikes are in. And if you don't want the crazy long reach, I still think it's awesome that they make a ton of different reach sizes and still offer this super long chainstay. So you can really fine tune the ride feel you want out of your reach and wheelbase, and, you know, basically make the bike you want with a ton of different geometry options on a really solid suspension platform, with great build quality. Like, the bike's sexy. So let me know what you guys think. Consider subscribing if you like the content. Like I said, I want to make a lot more videos with this thing and keep them coming. I have a dual crown for this thing, a 180 mil Öhlins dual crown with a bunch of offsets. So I want to do that too. And something I haven't done yet is a timed shootout. So I'm going to try and find time for a timed shootout and maybe put it up against the Specialized Enduro. But with that being said, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.